The amount of money going to Ukraine in this bill is more than we spend on the entire Marine Corps. Think about it. We're going to send to Ukraine more money than we spend on our own Marine Corps. This is a bill about Ukraine first. This is a bill that makes us weaker. There is no money to give to Ukraine. It's not like we've got a pot of money. There is no surplus. There is no rainy day fund. This money will be printed up or borrowed from China to send to Ukraine. It makes us weaker.
Happy Thursday, everybody. That was Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. That was from last week, or actually a couple weeks ago. I keep forgetting to play that. And that was basically right before the Omnibus 95, or is it 98? I always confuse the two. It's a big number regardless. Anyway, the monster bill, let's say $95 billion spending package got approved, $61 billion of it, which goes to Ukraine. And that's pretty insane that is more than the United States spends on their own Marine Corps, supposedly. Now, again, I mean, I think Rand Paul probably knows what he's talking about, being that he's a senator. And man, he is has emerged for me as one of the very, very, very few political voices that, I don't know, I just think he's got common sense going for him.
Once the border bill failed and they decided that this wasn't really about the border, that this was about Ukraine's border, the American Firsters plowed on, but with a more intellectually honest proposal. Nothing for America, everything for Ukraine. That's what this bill is. Nothing for America, nothing to stop the invasion of nearly 1 million people across our southern border. They offered a border bill that would have said, well, if we have an emergency, the emergency's already happened. Nearly 1 million people came in the last 2 months. That is the emergency.
That is seriously pretty insane. If you think about how many people have come across the southern border, I mean, in the last 2 months, let alone seriously the last 4 years practically, ever since 2020. I really wonder, where are all these people? Where are they living? What are they doing? What is going on? Honestly, it's such a, I mean, that's a lot of people, 1 million people in 2 months. I don't know what the total number for the past 4 years is going to be, but it's astronomical. And then again, I mean, you have to ask the question, and that is, are those people voting in November? Alrighty. Anyway, give that some thought.
My theology professor at the Catholic school I went to was a guy named Riley, last name, and he had been drafted by the Green Bay Packers.
All right, I seriously feel bad for even playing that, but I had to play it because, oh man, the teleprompter got the best of President Biden again.
Was a guy named Riley, last name.
All right, if you did not pick up on that, basically, on the teleprompter, it said Riley, and then it had in brackets last name, as in he was supposed to say that guy Riley's last name, but he said last name instead, so he just read it. Anyway, oh my goodness. All right, let's move on. You know, I found a clip online that I don't really want to talk about this topic that much, but I'm going to play this clip, and I probably won't talk about this much anymore. And again, it's a little bit in regards to COVID, but it's not really about COVID. It's more just about people, okay? More just about people, and when people recently get questioned, you know, that's one thing. I mean, obviously, I think there's definitely two sides to everything. There really is. There's two sides to everything. Even things that I don't agree with, there's another side to it. But when clips come out that show consistency over a period of 40 years in terms of various major global health events. I don't know. That makes me think a little bit, and it's definitely interesting.
And I will put the lie to the individuals of the NIH, particularly Gallo and Fauci and Hazeltine and Essex and the rest of these scoundrels of the worst order. Criminals guilty of genocide, without a doubt. I invite them to take me to court. I wish Burroughs Wellcome would take me to court, because they have been putting out a killer drug knowingly. Because in a court of law, I would have the opportunity to provide the absolute proof and evidence, as I have in my book, Deadly Deception.
So that was Dr. Robert Wilner, and he was a very vocal and prominent figure, basically noted for his role in AIDS denialism. And he was saying how AIDS was not caused by HIV infection. And there's a lot of information on that. There really is. I think I need to, at some point, suck it up and do a major deep, shallow dive on that topic. But again, the only reason I'm introducing it is because, or even talking about it, is because, again, I think for me, I had another friend who finished reading the book, and we had a really good discussion. And he said, I feel like I'm going through what you went through starting in March of 2020. And I'm not really going to ruin the book for anybody, but what I am going to say is, it was March of 2020 that, again, if nothing else, and this is not a bad thing, and this is not controversial, and this is not anything, it's just the reality. It was that whole situation. I don't know, it just didn't make sense to me. It didn't make sense to me. And because of it not sort of passing my personal smell test and making sense to me, that's what started me on this, honestly, on this entire deep shallow dive process, and on, again, just for lack of a controversial way of saying it, just asking questions. That's it. Just asking questions. I could be wrong in many of the questions, but again, what's wrong with asking questions if you want to basically understand something better? And I feel like what's going on right now is absolutely a situation where, they don't want anyone asking questions.
Now, I'm not alone in what I'm doing here today. How does the press escape such obvious truths? Why would the finest virologist in the world, the most noted virologist, member of our National Academy of Sciences, Peter Duesberg, why would he put his entire career on the line? What did he have to gain?
He's referencing another ridiculously well-respected at the time Dr. Peter Duesberg, who was a German-American molecular biologist and professor of molecular biology and cell biology at Berkeley. And that guy, again, at that time, like in the late 80s, he was kind of like the go-to guy for all of this stuff. And he was saying the same thing. He was basically denying the link between HIV and AIDS. And so what Robert was talking about is like, hey, why would this guy risk his entire career and his entire everything and put that all on the line if he really didn't believe it?
He's already lost his laboratory and his funding. They can't take away his professorship because he's tenured.
Well, there you have it. He lost his laboratory and his funding. They couldn't take away his professorship because he's tenured, or was tenured. Anyway, I just found that interesting. I came across that clip, and I think I really want to start to try and talk about, introduce, play things that speak to these pillars that we've talked about before. And that one, a couple guys like that, I mean, that's some serious authenticity when they're going against public discourse and going against really the public narrative that's being pushed from the top down, as they did back in the AIDS heyday. That's That's pretty insane. And obviously that took a ridiculous amount of resilience on their part to be able to stomach all that. And I feel like that's going on right now. I mean, this is exactly what's happening right now in terms of the discourse, really from the students who are all, again, these students, say what you will about them, seriously, I think first of all, you have to separate the troublemaker, agent provocateurs that are just paid knuckleheads who get paid to go, cause controversy, like Antifa and all these groups. That definitely is part of it. But the other ones that, are, risking their academic careers, risking their college careers, basically, risking getting expelled. Now, again, I don't know how much of the entire story they understand, going back to, let's say, 1917 and the Balfour Declaration, or 1948 and a little bit of the Nakba that we talked about the other day in the episode, I think Monday's episode, or maybe it was Tuesday's episode. But I will say, again, fundamentally, they're just advocating for human rights. That's really all they're doing. I don't think it goes any further than that. And like I said, if this was happening in any country, any religion, any nationality, I think they'd be doing the same thing. If the English were doing this to the Irish, which they already did back in the day, that's another deep shallow dive I got to get into. I think they'd be advocating for the same thing, the students, I'm saying. So anyway, I want to start kind of tying some things to some of these pillars and like bringing also, more stuff from the past, because I think over the past many episodes, I have kind of strayed away from that.
I have a question for you, and I mean this quite sincerely. What is it about journalism that is worth dying for?
Well, first of all, these people are being killed, right? They are being killed because there's a big, problem going on in Gaza right now. And what is worth dying for and risking your life? If you ask me as a foreigner going somewhere,
yes,
it is to tell the truth and to get under, the headlines, to actually know and be people's eyes and ears on the ground and to know what's going on, to try to tell the full story of what's going on.
All right, I think I'll play a few more clips for you guys. So that's Christiane Amanpour. She's a pretty famous CNN journalist. She's on the Stephen Colbert show. Again, I'm not really a Stephen Colbert fan. Christiane Amanpour, she does some good reporting. I think she's biased many times, but this is her take on the situation going on in Gaza with Colbert. And again, I will say, part of what brings someone like her or gives someone like her credibility is, she's the top anchor at CNN. So obviously she's getting information and facts that most people are not.
The other fact is that the government in Israel right now, and this is very sad because it is a democracy in that part of the world, and it has a robust media landscape. It's potentially, it's taken measures already to ban, for instance, Al Jazeera.
All right, let me chime in on this real quick and, give a little balanced take to this. So Al Jazeera, if you don't know, it's probably the preeminent Middle Eastern news organization. It's like the CNN of the Middle East, and it's owned by the country of Qatar, actually. You know what? I messed that up a long time ago, so I'm going to call them Qatar. It's owned by the country of Qatar, and obviously it's very critical on Israel. Now, again, the Israelis will say that's out of their bias against Israel, but they would say they're, basically that's their take. Hey, that's what they're seeing, and they're reporting it the way, they're calling their balls and strikes. Now, as crazy as this sounds, I will say, I don't know, I guess Israel's in the middle of a war and they don't want that. They don't want to allow journalists that are, basically reporting negative things on them. So, do they have a right to kick them out of their country? As crazy as that sounds, I guess they do. Yeah, I kind of think they do. It's not technically how it's supposed to work based on, journalistic law. But then again, I mean, what is law anymore? It seems like, the rules are getting rewritten as we go along. But, I will say, hey, if that's Netanyahu's decision, he's like, you know what, get these guys out. I don't want negative press coming out about us. And this is my country. I guess their government has the right to do that. But then the question becomes, what does that mean?
What would that mean?
That would mean that we have one less actual route of information out of Gaza. And they are a professional news organization. And, this has a very, very chilling effect and a very chilling. I mean, I don't know of a democracy that has banned independent journalists, especially from other democracies like America, Britain, France, wherever you want to say, Canada, from going to cover, a war that they're undertaking.
All right. Again, I mean, interesting discussion point from Christiane Amanpour and Stephen Colbert. I guess the question is, I don't know. I mean, that's obviously, your gut instinct, even though I said, hey, they do have the right to do that, but which again, I mean, I guess they do if you want to be fair about it. But then your gut instinct is like, okay, well, obviously they don't want, the truth to be seen. It actually reminds me of the Beijing Olympics, which took place back in February 2022. And that was when China created like this closed bubble loop, and all of the media literally was not allowed to basically, you couldn't go roam the streets of Beijing. You had to stay inside this basically enclosed media bubble. And, it was because they didn't want people out there seeing either the reality of the lack of COVID that was going on in China, or they didn't want them to see the various social credit score stuff, like, the cameras catching people jaywalking and doing things like that. Or probably most importantly, they didn't want any media talking to the civilians and talking to the Chinese people and trying to like get an understanding of what's really going on over there. Seriously. So, again, that to me is shady. It's shady. Obviously, you have something to hide if you're not letting the free will of the media happen. All right, and speaking of the free will, he's back.
The House recently passed the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act. I think this is a mistake. Not a small mistake, but a big mistake. What Congress has effectively done here, and it's going to the Senate for passage, is to say that there are certain opinions that you cannot express. If the First Amendment to the Constitution means anything, it means that all opinions, no matter how heinous, get to be expressed. Is it heinous to compare the actions of Israel to Nazi Germany? Absolutely it is. But we are a country where you get to express that opinion in the first place. What the conservative movement needs to be doing is to be standing for American values, to dilute this poison on the other side to irrelevance, to provide direction to a generation that is lost, hungering for purpose and meaning. That's what we see manifesting themselves in these campus protests. It's people who are lost. We got to lead them by saying this is what America stands for. We stand for actual true free speech. We stand for the actual Constitution. That's true America.
All right, I had one buddy tell me, he's like, dude, you have a man crush on Vivek. I really don't. But I think he's got some good takes. Now, I played that one on purpose because I actually agree with the first half of what he said. Again, this is a slippery slope, what the House passed, and we'll see if it passes in the Senate. But man, you're really starting to play around here with the First Amendment. You really are. And I don't think that's a good thing. So I agree with him on that, but I don't agree with him on the second half. I don't think this is a lost generation. As a matter of fact, I used to maybe think it was a lost generation. But now when I look at what, Gen Z is doing and the stances they're taking, again, I mean, I put in the time to really look, and it is on TikTok. And if anyone's like, oh, you get your information from TikTok, that's just someone who's never spent a minute on TikTok, okay? I mean, it sounds funny to say TikTok, but I'm telling you, there is incredibly well-researched and really good takes on there from a lot of people that are on the ground at these universities. You know, they're literally there in the mix, like on the lawn, and then they're recording. So like, it's the real deal. It's the real deal. And then secondly, like I said, they're very well researched. So I don't agree with the fact that I think this generation is lost and therefore they're struggling to find identity in anything. I really do think this generation, in many ways, they give, I'm going to swear for a second, they give zero fucks. Like, they just don't give a shit about the past stuff. And they don't have that historical, almost baggage, you know? I was going to say context, but they do have some context, but it's really baggage. They don't have the baggage that our generation really has with so many things. I don't know. That's how I see it. If anybody sees it tremendously differently, let me know. Would love to have that conversation. If any of your kids is involved in any of this stuff, I would love to talk to them and we can do it all, you know, under the radar. I don't need to mention names in any case, but you know, if anybody does have kids that, you know, are involved actually on one side or the other, on either side, if they're opposed to what's going on at their university, I'd love to talk to them as well, because I haven't been able to find many of those kids to talk to. So I would honestly welcome that, because again, maybe I'm missing something and I'd like to look at this from both sides. Oh man. All right. I have a few more stuff, but you know what? I'm going to end it today and I'll pick this up on Friday. Call a spade, everybody.
The ending was terrific.
This episode was brought to you by the new book, Deep Shallow Dive into You, available now on Amazon in hardcover, paperback, as well as via Kindle. Pick up your copy today of Deep Shallow Dive into You, a guide to having a more authentic relationship with yourself. Turns out it is indeed true. Bro wrote a book.